There were so many times where people laughed at me. Like with carpentry, there were several carpenters that said, "You're going to start a carpentry company? Oh, there's too many carpenters out there. You're going to fail." And I'm like, "Well, it's in line with my values, so I'm going to see this through." And I tell you what, on the other end of it, you will never regret fully committing to something that you're passionate about. And the outcomes of that is the type of person you're going to become. Because it's not just what you're going to receive by following your dreams, it's the person you're allowing yourself to become.
Hey everyone, welcome to Venture Out, a podcast series from Entrepreneurth that shares the brave stories of Northerners who are inspiring innovation and community well-being through business. I'm your host, Zena Cowan.
We have fires across the tundra. We are ice of a million years. Our mothers, our fathers hold us. We stand together.
I'm really excited about today's episode because a lot of it is focused on growth, like personal growth and leadership. And these are two of my favorite things to talk about. In this conversation, we really hone in on the idea that growth is an inside job, and it's one that requires a lot of care and patience and willingness to adapt. And this is especially true for entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to grow alongside their business and lead a team. I'm joined by Les Walker, who is somebody that knows a lot about this. Les is the owner and CEO of Walker Home Construction in Whitehorse, Yukon, and he's a proud member of Champaign Aishihik First Nation. Les has transformed his life from early challenges into a thriving enterprise that builds more than just homes and community spaces. It builds people. His core philosophy is cultivating warriors within our community. I love that. And that's a commitment that's reflected in his workforce, where the majority of his staff are First Nation citizens. Les's visionary leadership has garnered national recognition, including the NACA Indigenous Business Award of Excellence and the Cando Indigenous Economic Developer of the Year Award. In this episode, Les and I talk about his journey and how it's shaped how he does business and how he's building capacity and resilience in the North. Let's jump in. So Les, the first time we met was when I came to visit you at your head office in downtown Whitehorse. And I remember walking in and the space was buzzing. It was buzzing with your team. And that was my very first impression of what you had built as an entrepreneur. So can you start by telling me a little bit about your business and where you come from?
My name is Les Walker, Champaign Aishihik citizen, Wolf Clan, and born and raised in the Yukon. I have two companies. One is a general contracting company, and basically we do residential and a little bit of commercial. We're getting into commercial as well, but 90% of our focus is on residential construction, and 90% of the work we do is for First Nation communities, and we've had great success with that, and a lot of impacts, I think, on not only the people that we work for, but the people that work for the company. And my other company is called Prefab Yukon, which is relatively new. And that's a wall manufacturing facility where we can purchase bulk material and then manufacture that into panelization. So that company's formed so that we could offer that service not just to Walk Home Construction, but to other citizens and other companies and other First Nations, so that like we can meet them at where their capacity level is, and offer them some sort of value other than we want to get all the work and take all the work. We really want to just find spaces where we can maximize values.
Mm. I like that mindset and approach. And I was really excited to hear about the work that you're doing in the industry, both residential and commercial, because as we all know, access to housing and access to spaces is a big challenge in the North. And that's something that you and your team are addressing. But honestly, Les, what I find just as exciting is how you're actually operating your business and how you center the people who are on your team. And I know that sense of community goes way back to the people you come from, your nation. So before we jump into your path as an entrepreneur, let's go back to the beginning. I want to know about how your nation has played that role in your journey and in your success.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually put in a group home at the age of 11, and Champaign was my guardian. So a huge part of my life, although my main point of contact with Champaign at that point was a social worker. So I never really knew the culture completely, but I knew that they were there when I didn't have anybody else there in my life. And I came to a point years later where I was sitting in a job that I was doing, and it was going really well. And I had this moment where I was just sitting having a coffee. It was coffee break, and it was just me at work that day. And this voice said to me, "You're doing pretty good." And I agreed with the voice. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing pretty good." And this voice said, "Yeah, you're going to be rich." And I agreed, and I was actually feeling good about this voice. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to be rich. It's working out good for me." And then it said to me, "Is that enough?" And it completely stopped me in my tracks. And it got me to focus on, what am I working towards here? I'm succeeding on one level, but is that what I want to be working and dedicating my life to? And when that question entered my mind, I knew instantly that it wasn't enough. And so I actually went down to Champaign, the office in Whitehorse, introduced myself to the secretary, Sheila, who's still there, amazing woman. And I said, "My name is Les Walker. I'm a citizen, I'm a father, and I'm a carpenter. Can I volunteer?" And at the time, they didn't have capacity to take on volunteers. But eventually they got me to be a part of a constitution committee, and I got to go to communities and reconnect with citizens and elders and kids. And I got to hear about their concerns, which really made me feel like I could be of service at some level. And it brought me back to our community. And through that, I reconnected with our people, and our people are loving, they're supportive, they're hardworking, passionate. And when we get together, magical things can happen. So I really wanted to be more and more a part of that. And that I took that into my business. I said, if I treat everybody that I work with and I work for and that works with me with this same respect, which is the culture of our people, then it's going to be congruent with my values. And it was a rediscovery of those values.
Wow, that's quite a powerful full circle moment, coming back to your nation and saying, I want to give back to you, and ultimately building your business around the values of your people. And I think that's especially noteworthy given the significant challenges that you experienced as a young person growing up in care. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but I'm curious, how did you get into carpentry in the first place? Because I know that it was really your launching pad into a new life, a new way of living. So how did that journey get started for you?
Well, I got into trouble. When I was in the group home systems, basically they said that as soon as you turn 18, you're on your own. Like literally, on the street, like leave with your bags. And there wasn't much support in helping you figure out what the next step was. So for me, I just I kind of started leaving the group home early, running away when I was 17, like running away from the reality that I was going to be abandoned by the system when I turned 18. So I'm like, well, I might as well just leave now. And obviously the people that I was surrounded with were mentoring me to be quite the juvenile delinquent, and I was more than happy to please them and be a part of something. So that kind of climaxed with me becoming or committing an armed robbery. And I remember the moment that it happened, realizing that this isn't who I am, and I couldn't believe that this felt like it was out of my control. It felt like the world was pushing me in that direction. So that process was very transformative for me to really, as a young person, to say I do not want to be seen as a person that is destructive like this and that is dangerous. I want to be seen as a person. I want to be of value, and at least not be seen as a thief, which in my mind was the lowest of low. And so I had this opportunity to go work with my stepdad when I was in Dawson City, and we did carpentry. And it was so simple. I got to work hard, and at the end of the day, we got to see the fruits of our labor, and it was amazing. And you know what? The customer would come, and they would be happy. My boss was happy, and it seemed like the more effort I put in, the more positive impacts I had in my life. So I thought, hey, this is pretty simple. I'm all in. And then that kind of transcended into me taking on my apprenticeship and following that career.
So, what that story tells me is when you've experienced pain and rejection for so long, you really take notice when, for maybe the first time, you get positive affirmation or validation for something that you're doing. And you're showing yourself that you are contributing to something valuable and that you're able to do it. And I don't know if that feeling is necessarily enough to keep us fully motivated in the long run, but it's certainly enough to get us going and on a new path.
I think that a single belief is so powerful. And the truth is that it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be something that we fully believe in and we commit to. And then once we have that belief, it dictates the directions that we move and the things that become possible to us. And so I think that having that belief that being a really good worker was going to fix some of my problems was probably naive, but it was going to fix some of them, and it was going to start with a huge issue that I needed to face. It's to be able to be productive in a world and be able to take care of myself and to generate income and to be able to hold down a basic need of mine and everybody. So now there was a lot of trials and tribulations after that, because as you can imagine, when you're poor and you're drowned in, you'll reach for anything, a log. And even if that log pulls you further out into the ocean, you'll just grasp it for life. And so I was blessed with a lot of situations and a lot of teachers that pointed me in directions that kept me looking for the shore, and to really define which one I wanted to land on. And I look back on that with appreciation and humility and value.
Okay, so it's one thing to find a career path and to realize, hey, I'm good at this. This is leading to great results. And for some folks, that's more than enough for the rest of their careers. But Les, you took it a step further and said, hey, not only do I want to be a carpenter, but I actually want to build a business around it. And as I've gotten to know you a little bit, I would say you have that entrepreneurial spirit, that spirit of innovation. And I'm curious if you can reflect on that a little more and how it was nurtured, because getting into entrepreneurship is a really big leap of faith, particularly when you're showing up with a lot of past traumatic experiences.
It is. I honestly think that my childhood, being in the group homes, not really fitting into any identity or any group. I wanted as much as I could to fit somewhere, but not quite. Like, I'm First Nation, but I don't look First Nation. I'm probably the whitest First Nation you've ever seen. Plus, living on the streets, running away from the group homes. I mean, I slept under park benches. I was 13, 14, 15. If you wake up and you're hungry, you have to find a way to food. And there's other kids and there was other homeless people that would show you tricks of the trade, and you start realizing, like, hey, it's things are possible, and you can actually start thriving in certain situations where you would assume that you would be just barely surviving. So I think that mentality of saying, hey, I can focus on the obstacles all I want, and there'll always be unlimited amount of obstacles, or I can focus on the paths. And when you're starving, you only focus on the paths. You're not gonna. I mean, you could focus on the obstacles, but eventually you're gonna be like, I just have to get food. Now, how I went about getting food wasn't always honorable, right? Like, but at the end of the day, I think it created a mentality in me that empowered and put the responsibility in my hands to say, find a way. And then that added on to the fact that I didn't like being told that's just the way it is.
How were you experiencing that carpentry journeyman reality and that culture when you were in that position in your life? And how did it propel you forward towards saying, I don't want to accept that this is just how it is. I want to do something different and I want to create my own reality where I am more in the driver's seat?
There was a lot of aspects that were amazing with that process, with the apprenticeship process, and a lot of the companies I worked for in journeyman. I had really good work ethic. I was still struggling with trauma, right? Like, so I was struggling with my addiction issues. So it was all sort of mixed together. It was kind of like a wandering wolf in the forest trying to find my way out. So there was a lot of mistakes, but I saw it through. And I think one of the biggest impacts for me was my children. And I have a really high threshold for pain and discomfort. Obviously, my childhood has put me through that. But when it started to affect my relationship with my children, that's when I knew that I wasn't going to fit within this system. And what I noticed was that if my kids were sick and I had to stay home, I was getting treated pretty horrible by some of my bosses. And it really put a major conflict in between two of the values that I hold, is to be a really good father and to be a good worker. And so I started to think about other things that I could do. And it just turned out that I had an opportunity right as soon as I became a journeyman to take on a contract. So I took that opportunity and I really loved it. And I thought, hey, I'm going to take a risk, and either I'm not as good of a carpenter as I think I am, and I'm going to go back to the industry, or I am going to be okay and I'll take what comes with that. But I'm not going to sacrifice being a father to be a carpenter. And it turned out really well. My customers enjoyed it, and it was worth it. The values were high enough for me to take the risk, and I was able to kind of assess that before. I knew why I was doing it, and it wasn't just for money. It was literally to provide the space so that I could have a life that reflected who I wanted to be as a father, and how hard I wanted to work as a carpenter.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that's a motivator for a lot of people who have children and families to get into entrepreneurship. But Les, did you come into it with any sort of prior business knowledge, or was that something that you really had to learn and teach yourself along the way?
Like, I go back to, I think every criminal or drug dealer is in that business field, exchange of services and goods for money, right? Like, that kind of that survival instinct was I think what gave me a foundation of it. I think that I'm not proud of the things that I did when I was younger, and I did it to survive, but there were a lot of skills that came out of that, that I can look to say, hey, I think that it created a foundation of growth, especially when I pointed them in a positive direction.
Yeah, definitely getting to a place where you can see the lessons and see the character building that has come from your past. Um, I think that's I think that's the goal for a lot of us who are on our healing journeys and who are looking for that spiritual growth. And if we can be in that place, I think that ultimately allows us to have more empathy for others who are on their own journeys. And that brings me to this next point about your team, Les, and how you work with others. And that's one of the first things I noticed when I went to Walker Home Construction's website. You've got this really beautiful video that showcases your team and how you're building this culture of warriors within your business. So, how have you gone about doing that over the years?
Yeah, I mean, like it's a long story, and there've been some major impacts with some of the people that decided to take a risk on with the company and join us. You know, I've had, this year we had over 50 employees, but I think that there's some major ones. The first one is my cousin, Dave Germain. He was a really good carpenter, one of those guys that just, you don't have to question his work ethic. He shows up and he's just amazing. And he was working for the First Nation and they ended up laying him off. And as soon as I found that out, I went right to where he was, and I told him, I said, "Trust me, this is what I'm going to do." And I laid out a vision for him. I said, "This is what I want for my company, and this is what I want to give to you." And he did. He took the risk, and having him committed to the company, it opened so many doors, because now it wasn't just me, and then of course my wife, she was working for the government, and she'd been kind of dabbling in the company, and I told her, you have to make that choice yourself, but there is a place for you. And so she left her government job to come work for us, and she's more than happy now. And so there's been several people that have, including our executive director, Rutvik, right now, who have left really good jobs, because they love the culture of the company, and they like the fact that it was an opportunity for growth. So my mentality with all of this is to try to offer the people that work for the company the same thing I offered myself. I want you to be held accountable to the things that you need to do in this job, but I want this job to reflect and add to your life.
That's a great anecdote about your cousin. And I think it's great that you're giving a different type of opportunity to young carpenters who are coming through the door. And I'm sure at this point, they all know about you, Les, and the type of boss you are and the type of operation you run. So how do you, like, once they come into the team, how do you support them on their growth journey while they're working for you?
Well, the truth is I can't as much as I want to. I have a responsibility to the company to be, as an owner, to create a strategic vision and to build partnerships and to continue that path so that we have something to work towards. The way I look at it is, I can't be a martyr, and go to the site, and because every time that I go to the site, even though I want to connect with my cousins and the people that work with the company, and I want to build a good relationship with them. I kind of realize that I can't. And as soon as I start doing that, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing for the company and where I add maximum value. So what I do is I invite, the foreman and the construction managers to do that. And then we're doing it as a community. What I don't want to create here is a mentality of like Zeus on the mountain. What I want to come to a site was, whereas if I walk on the site, you can't tell who the boss is. I have to invite people to a space and they have to say, yeah, I agree with that. And then they have to articulate that in their voice. And that's what's cool about it, because then it's not mine. And I never wanted this to be mine. I started it out because I needed it, but my intent wasn't that, I have a vision and I want everybody to do what I think, and connect the way I think that they should connect. No, I want to be a part of a community where I serve, and I feel like I serve everybody that works for my company, and I want to empower them, and I want to learn from them. So that way, I'm inviting the people that work for me to be able to connect with the people that they work with on a day to day basis, their crews.
Okay, so this is why I wanted to talk to you, Les, because you are the entrepreneur who has the largest team of anybody that we have featured on this podcast. And I really wanted to understand your approach to leading, because it's one thing to be a solopreneur or to have a team of 2 to 3 staff. What you are doing with a team of 50 plus is a different ballgame. So, what is your methodology for empowering your managers and folks who are in director positions so that they can really have that agency to lead their own teams? And then, like you said, you're not feeling like you have to be there all the time and sort of have every finger in every pot. And you can step aside and you can be that person whose job it is to really carry the strategic vision forward.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the definition of being a martyr to a vision, and it's very hard, right? It's not that I don't trust the people, but it's just for me having to figure out things a lot of my life on my own and not having certain supports. I trust was a major one for me. I wanted to trust, but it was hard. So this has been an exercise in trust. I never give anybody a position if I don't believe that they can do it. So I try to just remind them that I believe that they have the ability to do the things. It's okay that they don't know. All I'm really asking is that if we're making mistakes, then we adjust. So we're not continuously making the same mistake. That's where I find why I get frustrated. Where it's like, okay, we've talked about this 4 times. It's the same mistake. Let's make a fix, and then just literally giving them sovereignty over their positions. A lot of companies that I worked for, it was like top down. You don't do anything without going to the top. And I mean, a lot of government organizations are designed like that. I don't want to do that. I get too stressed. I'm too emotional. And in fact, to carry on to where I am right now, is I'm actually, my overall vision with the company is to create something that operates when I'm gone. I want this company to be here to create services for communities for many years and many generations to come, because I see the value in it and it makes sense to me. So I'm actually backing out of the company now because what I'm realizing is that sometimes as the owner, I'm like the source code, right? Like I'm there and I'm the one that started this. Um, when you have a person of support like that, you always gravitate to that person. I'm trying to leave that, which is very hard for me because it's almost like leaving a child, right? Like that's my baby. I'm trying to step back because I have multiple other things that I'm working on right now. And and then I'm trying to remind the team that they have the authorities and they have the abilities. And you know what I've been finding even just this last couple of weeks where it's like they're really shining and they're doing things a lot of ways better than I could have possibly done it. So it's something greater than me. And I'm so happy. But I will say that there's a part of myself that's sad because my identity, it saved me. It saved me from being a criminal. Was my identity was being a carpenter and a good worker. So I'll always be involved, but I'm very confident in the teams that I've created, and I will stay connected, and I will move on to other projects that I'm working on.
I think what you just described is a very bittersweet and real thing for a lot of business owners. And I know that personal growth is a major focal point in your life. And for that reason, you can't ignore that knock at the door that lets you know, less. It's time to move on. It's time to do something new. And I'm really interested in that evolving sense of identity and purpose. And I believe we have phases and seasons in our lives, and you know, there's a time for everything. And if we're committed to growth, really, we can't stay the same. We're going to evolve into something else. So to think about your business as an act of service that's bigger than you and that has taken on a life of its own, you know, one that you'll always be contributing to, it's great because you've now got so many other people that are feeding into what it is. So I'm glad that we're talking at this very generative point in your journey where you're ready to step across a new threshold. And I know from our last conversation, you've got some exciting projects underway. So tell me, what is next for you, Les?
Well, I've been working on a book, and I feel like I've always had this voice inside of me that says, "You have a book to write." I don't know what it's for. I thought maybe it was more of a healing journey for myself to really take my story outside of myself and write it down. Um, so I started to write a book, and it was basically like a biography about my life and some of the stuff that I've been through, which was some of it was pretty horrible and destructive, and some of it was really amazing, and I felt really good about it. And then another book started to form out of the first book, and it had to do with my life, but it focused more on impactful beliefs or impactful situations that fundamentally changed my outlook on life. And there's been many micro impacts on my life that have helped to get me to where I am, countless. But there have been some major impacts, like some realizations that was just like a light bulb turning on, or it was like once I actually held on to that belief, the changes started to come pretty progressively. And I would always question, like growing up, seeing my homeless friends or seeing my friends that were struggling with alcohol and drugs. I would always question how I found my way out, because I wasn't the smartest of them all. I wasn't like the handsomest. I wasn't the most charismatic. I was actually pretty timid back then. So I would often put these big questions out to the universe, like, how come I found my way? What was that one thing? So my book that I'm focusing on is some of those moments in my life where I felt these have made the biggest impacts.
Well, given where you're at in your career and in your leadership journey, I think this type of project makes a lot of sense. You know, it's this vessel through which you can be sharing those insights and those years of experience with others and offer support to them as they embark on their own journey. And once again, this is a project that allows you to really reflect on what's happened to you and how you've been able to morph your experiences into something really good. And I can see a lot of different people, especially young people and emerging entrepreneurs, really appreciating that.
I think I'm literally trying to write the book that I needed as a young man. And what I realized, what my life has taught me, we all go through moments of self-doubt. We all go through moments where we question our realities, where we have to face some of our beliefs. And so I really think that this adds value to people that are right there and they're looking for that. I want to leave this world, but I just don't know some of the tools to get to the next. And I've come to the intent right now that if my book, if I only affect one person, that the hundreds and hundreds of hours that I put into this book are worth it. And every lesson that I've done and every mistake that I've made is worth it. What this phase of my life is reflective of is getting back to a creative phase, because running companies and having these multi-million-dollar contracts, they put a lot of stress on you, and you're pretty restricted with your creativity. Like I try to do that the way I design my company and the culture of my company, but it's really connecting me back with the creativity, and it's also taking my healing to another level, because I'm bringing the story outside of myself. So it's been a major journey. I could talk to you forever about projects, but another project that I'm trying to work on is I'm trying to partner with a company to do waste management in a way that we utilize our waste and it creates heat, and you can use that heat to heat buildings, greenhouses, and the byproduct is biochar, which is a fertilizer. And so we can take our garbage and turn it into a form of energy, heat, and we can use that heat. And then the byproduct is healthy fertilizer for the ground. And I really want to invest in this. It's in line with my morals, and the company that I'm partnered with has done major work in this field. So I'm excited um, to move forward with them and to try to show the efficacy in these types of things.
Les, I think that's really cool. And I love the combination of having two different outlets. Like you've got your creative writing journey that will allow you to continue that self-discovery work. And then you also have this opportunity to bring your business knowledge and experience forward as an investor. And just a quick side note, our Entrepreneur team and Circle of Advisors went to Nuuk in Kalalit Nunat, or Greenland, last September. And when we were there, we had the opportunity to visit with an Inuk entrepreneur named Napartok Isak Petrusin, who is the owner of Sasuma Sea Salt and operated in a sea can that was heated through waste from the city. And it was very cool to see. I had never seen anything like that before. And what he's doing and what you're now pursuing is innovation for the North driven by Indigenous entrepreneurship.
I see clear pathways to success. I see clear pathways to self-reliance. I was just that CMHC invited me down to Ottawa to speak at a housing conference, and they're basically just going into the industry asking for supports and direction of future funding opportunities. And so I kind of went there thinking I'm sitting at the table with companies that are dealing, one project is $120 million. And I'm kind of thinking, what kind of value do I have coming from little Yukon? You know what I mean? Like I feel like I have value, but there's always that voice to say, this might be bigger than you can chew, right? But I show up and I speak from the heart and I get really good feedback from this. And what I found is a lot of the processes that I've started in my company, these other companies aren't even doing those. And so it was very hopeful to me to say, hey, I do have value here. So if I can come from a community as small as we live in, and I can go to communities where there's millions of people, and I still have value because I'm showing them pathways to processes that they're not even doing yet, what else could I do?
Les, we talk a lot about the systems in the North that need to change in order for community members to step into entrepreneurship, to launch and scale businesses. But I'd love to hear from you. This is my last question for you. What do you think the mindset shift has to be in order for somebody to really embrace that identity of being an entrepreneur?
I think I don't think everybody should start a business. I do think there's value in people starting businesses, to be able to write off as much money and retain more value for yourself. But I don't think everybody is an entrepreneur. And so I wouldn't want to push that. But if I was speaking to the entrepreneurs, I would say, go to the intent of why you're doing this. And what is the purpose of this? And then once you find that out, and it doesn't matter what it is, really, it could be just money. It could just start out as, look, I want to save money. But I think that we need to dig deeper with that. Why do you need money? Well, because I want to provide for my family. Okay, cool. That's a stronger belief than money, but let's put them both on the table now. And then once you have that, and then you have an idea of what you want to do for a business, just use that as your guiding force to move you forward. Try to connect it to something greater than yourself. If you can't, that's fine. But eventually try to, because eventually you're going to be successful, or you're going to get to a point where you're taking on work, and you really have to connect it to who you are as a human being, because we can get so easily pulled into things that create an outcome in our life that isn't aligned. So with anything that you take on, question why you would take it on, what you have to sacrifice to take it on, and weigh those values before you take it on. So that way, when you do take it on, whatever you do as an entrepreneur, you accept everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly on the other side. You're like, hey, I weighed and valued my stuff. I'm not going to be sitting here on the other side complaining about the outcomes. I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to say, yes, I committed to it. Because a lot of the times we take on opportunities without fully contemplating those values. And then we sacrifice things, and we become a very miserable person, or become overly stressed. And then it's just like, who am I and what am I working towards? And so It has to start within each one of us. And then I tell you what, a person that has that figured out, unstoppable. You're going to find pathways. You're not going to take no for an answer. Like there are so many times in industries that I've had where people laughed at me. Like with carpentry, like I remember when I first started, there were several carpenters that said, "You're going to start a carpentry company? Oh, there's too many carpenters out there. There's too many companies out there. Like you're going to fail." And I'm like, well, it's in line with my values. So I'm going to see this through. And I tell you what, on the other end of it, you will never regret fully committing to something that you're passionate about. And the outcomes of that is the type of person you're going to become, because it's not just what you're going to receive by following your dreams, it's the person you're allowing yourself to become. That's the goal. Just by being yourself, you invite people into the space. And now I don't have to sell you on something. I show up, I am what I am, you take it or you leave it. But either way, you're going to feel the impacts of how I show up. And it's cheesy.
As we wrap up today's episode, I wanted to highlight a remarkable project that embodies the values that Les and I talked about. Walker Home Construction, in partnership with Ketsa Construction Corp., played a pivotal role in building the new Family Preservation Wellness Center in Whitehorse. Led by the Council of Yukon First Nations, this center offers safe, culturally grounded temporary housing for Indigenous women and children. With 15 apartments, the facility includes communal spaces, cultural rooms, and gathering areas designed to reflect Yukon First Nations values. It is so beautiful. There's art everywhere. The design of the building just feels so modern and warm. It's actually just a couple of blocks away from where I live, and I love getting to see it. And I think this center stands as a testament to the power of visionary leadership and community collaboration that we see so often in the North. Venture Out's production team includes myself, Brandon LaRock, and Jess Duncan. Our theme song is called Fires Across the Tundra, and it's by the one and only Leela Gilday. You can find Venture Out on all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you like what you're hearing, subscribe and give us a rating. That makes a big difference. See you next time.
We are fires across